very important topic. My own personal advice is that I think that everybody should be constructing some type of advanced medical directives. And from my personal and professional experiences, I learned that one of the most wrenching challenges for families of someone who is significantly ill. Are you here okay? Is is not having the ability to implement the decision that they think their loved one would have made if that loved one were able to communicate, but parentheses, regrettably, close parentheses, that ill patient never had the opportunity to do it. And the truth is that in many cases, as the patient articulated certain preferences, very often halacha would recognize those. So it's a little bit of a chaval in situations where it was not able to take place. And related to the scenario is the fact that somebody may have constructed advanced medical directives, either in writing, which are more powerful, or perhaps at least verbally. But if they're old, if they were done, like 30 years ago, or they were done before a person experienced some serious illness, they may not be recognized in halacha as being the operating principles, desires of the particular patient individual. So advanced medical directives are extremely valuable when the patient is not able to communicate. Advanced medical directives, in my opinion, ease the path for the family members responsible for the patient. They may have been appointed, the proxy, or they are the next of kin. And some of the decisions that they're going to be participating in are pretty weighty. And most likely, advanced medical directives would help, and would probably the occasions where it would relieve certain feelings of guilt of someone feeling that they make the right decision with the patient, that they were able to communicate, actually concur with the decisions that were made. And while we often think of advanced medical directives as creating opportunities to perhaps suspend or not connect certain interventions, they can serve in just the opposite way. You could have a patient who fervently wants to live as long as he or she can, even with the compromised circumstances. And yet, because of the nature of the illness, today, it's difficult because hospitals, doctors, ethics committees, they define the value of life in their own mind very often. And they talk, about whether it's, productive life, fulfilling. And like having such a document, in a case where the patient said, let's just take the action, no matter what, I want to live as long as possible. And so you have a backup, and it could be very challenging having to face those forces that are trying to move on to the next patient into the same bed. So the first page that was inserted into your envelope, the top page, are 4 principles in end-of-life healthcare. So I think most people know principle number 1. In the Jewish religious world, I think most people know number 1. And truthfully, you have a bunch of people that are scared by principle number 1. And you have other people who might not, because they are conscientious and they understand where this principle is coming from, they may not explore whether or not there are, alternatives. But principle number 1 is that every moment of life is sacred. There are more dimensions to us than literally meet the eye. We could see a physical body, and we could have a conversation, with people, but it's hard for most of us to feel that we're connected to somebody else's neshama. But each and every, even to ourselves, sometimes, that's no small challenge to be connected to our own neshama. But this is parenthetically what Soloveitchik spoke once it's recorded in the Sefer Al HaTshuva on repentance. It's translated into English. That Rav Soloveitchik note that if you wake up in the morning sometimes and you just don't feel right, and you look in the mirror and just I don't know, it's a difficult day, and so Rav Soloveitchik says very often that's your neshama reacting to something you shouldn't have done before, the day before. So it's just one opportunity for us to get in touch with our neshama. But there's a neshama, and for a neshama, my mother-in-law, Shalom, used to say that the more if she had difficulty in this world, that's great because it's going to pave her way to a better olam haba. So there are different dimensions of the spirit, but that principle it is a guiding principle that every moment of life is sacred. But principle number two is also very important to understand. That one is obligated to extend life usually, but we're not obligated to extend intractable pain. So there are times that as wonderful as medicine is today, they don't always have the right formula for what a particular patient or a group of patients might need. So and yet there may be interventions that could take place that would extend a life, but in this condition of intractable pain. And the default position of halacha in that case is that one is not obligated to extend life. Now, again, it could be that that patient wants the life to be extended for various reasons. We'll mention a couple more as we go on. But the Rav Moshe Feinstein does record that basically just to extend a life of pain which cannot be alleviated. So the default is usually not to do that if there's no guidance otherwise. So it's like sort of just in a way, it's somewhere on the other side of the spectrum from rule number one, but they go together.
Can I ask questions now?
We'll try. We'll see.
Right. I was just thinking about sometimes the alleviation of pain leads directly to death, like with morphine when you get to a certain point.
So we'll try to look at that a little bit as we go along. If I don't touch on it, please remind me. And then principle number three is that, well, this does speak to, it's part of an answer to you, but one may not take any independent active steps to shorten a person's life. So if what you're saying, I'm not an expert on morphine, but I did read recently that it's only in rare cases where morphine, can shorten life. But I thought earlier that that almost any morphine is maybe slowing some functions down in the body, but if the morphine is being administered in the correct, and we always start at a very low dosage and gradual if the patient needs it. If it is being extended to the patient because the patient is in pain and needs the morphine to deal with the pain, that is halachically a legitimate administration of a substance. If it happens to have, the impact that it is shortening life somewhat, that's not what we talk about. That's not an independent active step. If somebody goes in, and which is illegal in most states, and certainly it's against halacha, it would be considered ritzicha. If someone intentionally, ups that with the intention of shortcoming the life, but that's not allowed by halacha for sure. And principle number 4 is what patients are entitled to, that every patients are really, unless there's medically counterindicated factors, patients should receive hydration, nutrition, oxygen, and antibiotics. Those are 4, you can make the list a little bit longer, but those are in my mind, the first four of the main principles in end-of-life health care. The last page in your packet is sort of like an excerpt from documents that we've distributed over the years from the Rabbinical Council of America. And I just want to call your attention on the front page. Yeah, the title is the Rabbinical Council of America, underlined, and then halachic guidelines to assist patients and their families in making end-of-life medical decisions. If you take a look in paragraph 1, but just going down where after 1, what are advanced directives? If you skip to the third paragraph where it says living will. So the living will, this document details what to do in specific medical scenarios. Right? And if you look at the next paragraph of the healthcare proxy, this document allows patients to choose an individual who will make decisions on their behalf in case they are unable to do so. So for sure, everybody should have that. If it's not going to be the legal next of kin that has that right, then everybody should have it really at the healthcare proxy. And but I strongly advise people to have this living will, which is synonymous with what I'm calling advanced medical directives. And a little bit, I want to give you, there are two documents, two multi-page documents that also, just parenthetically, the rest of the sheet, both sides, has interesting information. So at your leisure, not now, but this packet is yours. At your leisure, not that I'm saying it's going to relax you per se, but at your leisure, it may be helpful for you to review this document. But we're going to take somewhat of a look at two multi-page documents. One of them is a document that I edited, and I'll just tell you a little bit about that right now. Approximately 50 years ago, the Medical Ethics Commission of the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA does, its membership is well over 1,000 Orthodox rabbis. They tend to be what people might call modern Orthodox, whatever that means, So it's
not modern Orthodox.
What's that?
It's not modern Orthodox. It's Orthodox.
It's Orthodox, but it's not. It's not the Aguda.
That's an old fashioned. That's an old.
Right, but still, there are some rabbis, who would only join that organization. Others that wouldn't join the organization, but it's very, very prominent. It is the largest rabbinic organization. And about 50 years ago, they adopted a living will document. It was like an 11.5 by 17 sheet of paper folded in half to create a 4-page document that was authored by Rabbi Dr. Moshe the Tendler, Zichron Livracha. And that was used for a few decades. And then the RCA suspended its use. As I became more involved with the individuals facing end-of-life challenges and families responsible for people facing end-of-life challenges, I felt that the document, which was no longer easily available unless you had an old copy of it and were photocopying it, as people were, maybe not so many, but some were. I felt that document would really be very helpful for patients and their families. And I also developed an appreciation that there was at least something missing that reduced the impact of that document. And I asked the RCA for permission to edit the document because they were the copyright holder of it. And I received that permission. And then I discussed my ideas with Rabbi Tendler, Oliver Shalom. So I had many telephone conversations with him and one prolonged face-to-face meeting to to go over the edits that I made to the document. Basically, he gave me his approval. There were some points that we weren't exactly on the same paragraph, instead of saying page, if you reduce the and there are times that didn't matter to him, but nevertheless, I tried, and some of it was finished only recently. So, but I tried the document to be as close to 100% representing Rabbi Tendler's opinions in this document. So, in the second document, which we'll look at in somewhat in that order, is a very recent document. It's a very good document. The Nitivot Eimatai document. I'll speak a little bit some of the advantages and where each could really complement one another, as we go through. But it's a very good document. So let's take a look at the advanced medical directives, which was the number 2 entry in the packet. It's the one that I edited. Actually, I more or less would like to read through the introduction together with you. So this document is designed to augment the person's healthcare proxy form. So we're assuming, not that it's necessary, but it is an elaboration. It's possible that one of the motivations in trying to have short documents, but there are really 2 reasons that people turn to the shortened proxy over the living will. One was, in terms of that some people may have felt that halachically in some areas they need to go one way, differently than the longer document. But the other reason is that if you needed to present something to a hospital doesn't have time to start looking through, a 10-page document, but you show the proxy, and this is the person who's responsible for their medical care, and especially if they add some notations that they want all decisions to go according to Orthodox Jewish law. So it serves a vital purpose, but it doesn't mean necessarily that the person who's designated as speaking on behalf of the patient knows all the information. And the proxy is meant to represent the patient, not to impose the proxy's understanding of life and illness, etc., and to transfer that to the patient. That's not the proxy's role. The proxy's role is to be a true representative of the desires of someone who's going to become a patient or has already become a patient. So anyway, so this is the elaboration on my wishes. That's where we get the elaboration part is in this document, as would be true in the second, but not in the same way. So and so the proxy is better equipped in consultations with the doctors to act on your behalf should you not be able or choose not to express your preferences. The document may also help you to clarify your thoughts. This is the really very important. I can tell you the truth. I've gone over this document scores of times. I can't yet answer all the questions to a degree. I mean, in a way, that's good news because thank God I'm a healthy individual, and so it's hard to imagine to really put your mindset, someplace. For others, it's not so difficult. So today I started answering some questions, but there are questions I can't answer. I'm going to try to work on it, believe that in the weeks ahead. But that's a good role, a good stimulus at this point to start giving some thought. It's not to say that people's thought won't change. And that's a very important piece of this document. But there are limitations in the document. So limitation number 1 is that while it actually does list certain medical conditions, 5 different medical conditions are listed, each with its own independent section. But it's obviously it's not possible to list all the possibilities. And number two, it's also very, very important, is that even though choices are presented for one's election, in this document, it's I want, I don't want. There are numerous factors in a person's medical condition that for that patient may make the circumstance very unique. So for one patient A, it may be one option. For patient B that looks to have something similar, but it may not be an option. And therefore, should a medical situation arise in which you or your proxy will be asked to choose between available options, and especially if a choice of not to intervene is under consideration, it's like if you want to consider going against principle number one, that every moment of life has value, and maybe we should be pursuing life, and you're considering something different than that, for sure, once you consult with the halachic authority. And in caps, not all options are available in all scenarios, but they are often available. Halacha often does condone, again, never condoning active termination, of life, but it can condone not replacing, not starting something, depending upon the circumstances. And if a patient is not able to communicate, it has done so, and especially recently in a document, so that can be very powerful, and that can open up a door that otherwise is against the default. Halacha works by default. We'll have an example of a default in the opposite of principle number one. But principle number one is a default position that, lacking any other legitimate circumstance and input, that we opt for life. Number three, by halachic guidelines, the choices listed are not to be made at the discretion of the proxy. The proxy is to represent the patient based on conversations with the patient, and the choices recently indicated or confirmed by the patient. And number four, in the absence of uncontrollable pain or other, in the absence of uncontrollable pain, it means that pain is medically, pharmaceutically being controlled. But in the absence of uncontrollable pain or other counter-indicative knowledge, the default position is to extend life. Every moment of human life is sanctified. Every moment has the potential to allow the patient a special spiritual achievement that could impact the destiny of one's soul. That was my mother-in-law's position. For the last paragraph on page one, it is vital that so here is something that I added to the directives. Our attendant was very pleased by that. It's very vital that a person periodically review one's advanced directives. Somebody filled this out, like when the RCA came out with the document, they were 30 years old and they filled out the document, and today they're 86, whatever their age might be. It's not worth so much. Now it could be we could feel exactly the same, and that's great. And then one turns, like in the back of the book. Oh, by the way, your edition has some blank pages at the end, just in case you want to take notes and didn't have paper. But there's periodic review, and you can just endorse what you have, or you can indicate that you made changes, and you sign off on the page where it is, and so you could update it. But with not being updated, something is from 30 years ago when somebody was perfectly healthy. Today's in a different situation. It's probably fair to say usually not be recognized as an
Did the RCA give this out to people? I never.
Years ago, I think you had to request it.
We had
That's not mine. It sounds like mine, but it's not mine.
What was the question?
Yeah. No, Rabbi Kranzler asked if the RCA distributed it. I think you had to ask for it, perhaps even buy it. I mean, I remember once I bought like in quantity, so I think I bought. I had reasons like to give it out to people, even though I had a lot left over. But so it was available. Exactly how one got it, I don't recall. But if you're curious, I could show you a copy of the original one.
Have I?
Yes.
I'm a little confused between, I don't know if I should wait with between 2 and 3 on the front page. Because if I am a proxy and the person has made a decision which appears to be not halakhically sound, and I'm going to see a Rav about it, it seems that it's possible that that might be second guessed or whatever else.
No, that's true. That things should be endorsed by halakhic authority. But I'm saying, let's just say the patient said that should I be in uncontrollable pain,
Right.
just don't do any unnecessary procedures. But your proxy happens to be for Brenta believing in survival, so that would be imposing his will on top of it. Everything needs to be approved. Anything like really not to intervene should be consulted, with the halakhic authority. And that is part of the agreement of the person who fills out the form, that he wants it according to halakha. So that's not going against. You're doing, maybe he opted, I prefer this, but he only prefers it subject to halakhically being approved. So in that case, the proxy is exactly doing his job. Okay. Yeah, and just to elaborate a little bit, I mentioned, like, when you're younger, you think you can't imagine life. One of the rabbis I spoke to over the years had told me that there was this, maybe he was 18 to 20 years old max, was an avid motorcyclist, had a motorcycle accident. I don't know, parenthetically, when I took driver's ed, the biggest point they made in driver's ed was not that most motorcycle accidents were fatal. Big discouragement, to be riding a motorcycle. Yeah, so this fellow lost. I think actually he wound up having both legs amputated, or needing the amputation, and he did not want to live, and so he was, denying, the interventions that should have taken place, keep going. But one of his rabbis did convince him that there could be life beyond the motorcycle. And whenever I heard the story, the person, thank God, married, family, and was very happy that the rabbi convinced him otherwise. So, but had he written something and then something happened 30 years later, to go by the same thing, again, and sometimes, we think that that we can't, that we can't handle something, and other times, when we're younger, we think we can handle everything and it's not a problem. Then something hits us and we realize, it's just not as easy as I thought it might be, and it may change. So thoughts can change over the years, and that's why it's so important to update or to confirm.
Rabbi,
Yes.
can I ask you a question? Title IV organ donation. I thought it was not allowed.
Like everything else in Jewish life, there are guidelines for it. But Rabbi Tendler himself, if I'm not mistaken, was a big promoter. Rabbi Tendler was, I think, aware that there were times, hopefully it's not true anymore, that donation banks were hesitant to give certain organs to Jewish patients, maybe specifically religious patients, because they felt that the Jewish community was not giving in, was not contributing. So now, like the biggest problem is if someone would remove a heart prematurely, and that's a very complicated halakhic issue. There's a major difference among halakhic authorities. Like Rabbi Tendler was a prime believer in the concept of a brain death. That at some point, it has to go through the rigorous criteria, but at some point, if the brain is considered dead, then the person is considered dead according to one school of thought. But according to another school of thought, if that heart is beating, you're still alive. So it's very controversial. So certainly, within that, one who would go by, a more strict, calmer viewpoint, there's no way of taking the heart without killing the person. And there were reports I'm not an expert in this, but there were reports over the years of hearts being, even without this halachic debate, hearts being removed prematurely and really being what finished off the patient. Because that the heart is most valuable if it's been pumping very, very, very recently.
Rabbi, yeah, what is the value of 80-year-old heart or an 80-year-old heart?
So maybe he wouldn't be a cowboy. I don't know. I don't know. That's not my topic today. So even a lot of questions that would be more on the topic. My real topic today is to try to make you comfortable with advanced medical directives, with the concept, and to appreciate that they should be, updated, and and not necessarily passing the showers today. But I will tell you that there are definitely positions that, without medical directives indicating otherwise, that halacha is not going to approve, the suspension of certain interventions or the lack of taking them. So they can be. It doesn't come with a guarantee, but they can really make the difference in some cases and make life easier for the patient, which is that also is a key player here. It's not the family who has to feel good. It's the patient who is the one that is really, setting the direction. And I know in this audience it's not necessary, but it does, towards the first half of the second page, again just saying that never permitted to act in hasten human death. I actually did. Rabbi Tendler told me a story that a particular patient, a woman, was really in need of mechanical breathing intervention. And the doctor, needing it because she wasn't able to breathe properly and comfortably. But the doctor wrote her off already. And the doctor told the family they really shouldn't do it. And the family called Rabbi Tendler, alav shalom. And Rabbi Tendler said, absolutely, that she has to be connected. They connected it. The woman who was not very, I believe, the woman was not very communicative before it, and then she woke up. And some of the children, some of them slept in the hospital, others came in, but probably that for 3 days, there was very, very meaningful interaction between the patient. She did succumb after 3 days, but they had 3 days that made the mother feel good and the children feel. It was like experiences they said was like almost like never before in their adult lives. So that brought, it was a short period of time, but it brought more than just time.
But you can't predict that.
It's hard to predict anything, right? Okay, so I want to maybe take a look. There were, if I'm not mistaken, there were originally, I think, 5 scenarios in Rabbi Tendler's document, and there are 5 scenarios here. But I actually, I think, dropped one scenario that Rabbi Tendler told me to just put in because the lawyers that this is not a legal, per se. This is not a legal proxy here. Even though the document that I gave you. No, it doesn't include the, yeah. At this point of time, if you go to the RCA website and you want to get the proxy, they actually redirect you to the organization that produced the second document that we're going to take a look at, the AMATI document. But this document here is really meant for the patient, the family, the rabbi to understand where the person's coming from, what he or she had in mind. So I just make a disclaimer. I didn't run this past attorneys, but Rabbi Tendler told me that there was one thing that was just put in. It was meant as a test, to see how consistent people were. And I didn't put that in, but instead I put in question number 5, which is based on a very, very famous and vital tshuva from Moshe Feinstein, which in a way I referred to earlier. Rabbi Tendler authored a sefer which actually presents a few of Rav Moshe Feinstein's hallmark decisions on medical ethics, and he translated them, gave some explanation. Many of us a few years ago actually studied from the original text that tshuva and another key tshuva. So on page 7 of the booklet, scenario number 5. So here's the situation. If A, I have a terminal illness that, in the opinion of my doctor, and at least 2 other doctors, is incurable and will likely cause my death. And B, I am in significant pain. And the medical team is not able to improve my quality of life by reducing my pain, but is able to extend my life for a short term. Then my wishes are. So I referred to this earlier. And what did I say back then? I said that this is sort of the opposite of principle number 1, is that really to Rav Moshe, like if you didn't have written medical directives, and you never spoke to your proxy or to your spouse, or the case might be, about it, that is a default that most people would pass in this situation. I don't mean pass in the world; they would pass on taking the intervention. So, because it's not our role to be extending, pain. That's a famous story in the Gemara with Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who had terrible, maybe he's suffering from stomach cancer, whatever. He's in terrible, terrible pain. But his Talmidim were praying for his refuah shlema. So in their merit, as long as they prayed, he was still suffering. And me with the maidservant, who became a Talmidah Chachamah, because she was, often with Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, she learned a lot. And so, she saw what was happening. She saw how much pain that the Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was, and she threw a big pitcher to the ground, and it distracted the Talmid and the students. And in those few seconds, the Malach HaMaves took Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and the Gemara, at least the Rishonim, praise her that she did the right thing, that she distracted the Talmidim. So,
question what the team wants also.
Yeah. But the Rishonim say, endorse. I don't think we'll have an exact situation like that, but then it's a little bit complicated. But just the general message is that, so the general message is that this would be a default. But you know what? But not everybody wants that. Like, maybe I want more time. Maybe we're not always aware of how aware the patient is. Not so long ago, I went to visit one of our members, and I came into the hospital room, and the spouse was there, and first we had probably maybe a little bit smaller talk, and then the conversation changed turned to the patient. And I stopped the spouse and said, maybe we'll go outside and talk. I'm very, very careful. You never know what somebody, is hearing. And the spouse, declined, but it wasn't so heavy. But then it got a little bit heavier, and I sort of insisted that we step out in the hall, which we did. We had a conversation, and it was a pretty serious situation there. When it was time that I left, I called out the person's name. The person's eyes were closed at the time, but I called out the person's name, and I wished him refuah shlema. He raised his hand.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
He didn't want to be forced to live more.
Wow.
So anyway, 2 points to that. Again, never assume that someone who's not conscious can't hear. And that should work both ways. So you can speak encouragingly to the person, tell them stories, play music for them, talk Torah. And the fact that even though Rav Moshe puts this down as a default, but if you don't want it, so you want to go on record that you don't want it. So so that's a scenario, and the pattern, even though sometimes the wording is a little bit different, but the pattern in each of the 5 cases is that various interventions are listed: mechanical breathing, usually by machine, and yes, by machine in the higher cases, surgery, dialysis, chemotherapy, invasive diagnostic tests. In this scenario, blood and blood products, is an option, but on some it's not an option really. If you look backwards, you would see. But this pattern of these choices, I want, I do not want, that exists, more or less to each of the 5 scenarios. Yes.
Oh, this is terminology.
That some things are high.
Well, I found in the document that without making it visually different, that it was not clear it potentially might not be clear to which directive someone was saying. So here, it's not that cardiopulmonary recitation is per se, it's color coded, so the I want and I do not want matches. And that you don't get mixed up with the mechanical breathing, and you see mechanical, and you check that thing. So, it's either highlighted or not highlighted. You want to make sure that you're answering, a matching background when you answer. Yes.
Okay, I know in traditional living wills, it'll say that if I have a terminal illness or I'm in a permanent.
Right. So now I'm going backwards. And so if you turn to page 3.
Well, let me just say,
Yeah.
It's important to underscore the fact that there's an and I'm in horrible pain. In other words, it's just one. Yeah, in other words, we have to have.
Are you saying that something's missing?
No. Traditional secular living will say if I have a terminal illness or I would be in a permanent vegetative state, I do or do not want. What's important here is you're saying if I have a terminal illness and I have significant.
Right. Well, there are
sometimes it may not say that, yeah.
No, the language is very specific. I did not create this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So the language of the scenarios, with the exception of number 5, but I did craft that very carefully. But the language is Rabbi Kendler's language for the other 4 other 4 situations. So and there's that you have. I'm not going to go into detail. You can take a look, but you have other scenarios. I want to share a story before going to the Ematai document. So Rabbi Kendler, a couple of years ago, shared with me a story which he said at the time, has not yet been published. I don't know. I doubt that it has been since, but I don't really know. But he said there was this 96-year-old man. He lived on the Lower East Side. He was in great health. He was in great shape. He lived alone, and he was very independent, and he was successful at it.
Old.
Yeah, and that's how old he was. I'm not picking it because I know there's somebody not in the room who is that age, but I didn't pick that for that reason. That's the story. The story is about a 96-year-old man, and he fell, and he wasn't aware that he broke a bone. And by the time he went to the doctor to have himself checked out, he was gangrene. And the doctor told him that he needed an amputation. And he said, no way. that I've lived my life, all these years, like I'm independent, not to be able to, walk with, have to work, to retrain myself and everything. It's just no way. And I think maybe um, I do have a fuller version of the story. I think maybe not. I think the doctor was the one who called Rabbi Tendler, and he asked the patient, could Rabbi Tendler speak with you? And so the patient agreed. So at some point, that conversation took place with Moshe Tendler, and the patient. And again, the patient said that he doesn't want amputation. He can't imagine not having the same level of independence. Rabbi Tendler said to him, so especially maybe because this patient, the man, lived on the Lower East Side, he said, "Can I take you to my father-in-law, to Rav Moshe Feinstein?" And we discussed this issue together. So he agreed. And they went to Rav Moshe, and the man told him his story and told him, and he didn't want this, and Rav Moshe really told him he should. You're a healthy man. You're in better health than some people much younger than you. You'll have a life. And he that was Rav Moshe's position really was that he should have the amputation. And the man said to Rav Moshe, I just can't. Just can't. I cannot live, knowing that I'm not going to have this independence. And Rav Moshe's words to him in the end were, I understand. So I'm showing you that's the weight potentially of medical directives. Without them, he should have been given. Like if he was temporarily, unconscious, but if they waited longer, the gangrene would spread, in the body, and the doctor said we have to amputate now. Then halachically the decision would have been made to amputate. But he changed that course. So advanced medical, again, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be effective in every case, but there definitely are cases that, there are a lot of people, they are afraid of talking halacha when it comes to end of life because they know principle number one, every second of life is valuable. But medical directives can help a lot. Let's go to the AMI document. So the first part of the AMI document, this introductory notes. It's really the first part is healthcare proxy. I decided not to burden you with more paper. Like if you want, we can print for you the RCA proxy, but this is approved by the RCA. If you prefer a proxy document from the Aguda, they are on the table outside, and I think we have adequate copies for those who may want them. If not, we have access. I can get that to you. But so the first part at your leisure, you'll go through the documents, the proxy. The proxy, runs through page 7 and plus. So page 8 is not physically numbered.
Could you just say something about this organization? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's a recent organization. They're among their medical consultants, is Rabbi Abraham Steinberg from Israel, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Steinberg, who is a major halachic source for medical ethics, who's also very close with Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and consulted with him on many questions. They're Rabbi Aaron Galat, who he's spoken by us, and his brother is a member of our shul. He's highly respected. I often have turned to him as well. Glad is also a Talmud of Herschel Schechter, and always, his orientation towards medical ethics, halacha in general, definitely based on Rav Schechter. Although Rasheka also calls him the questions. So, you know, it works.
So this is not an RCA product?
It's endorsed by RCA. And there are other Rabbanim. If you go to their website, you could see the Rabbanim involved in it. But I want to tell you, it's a very nice, it's a very nice document that was produced here. And if you go to, they're listed. If you look in the bottom left corner, you go like 3 pages past page 7. Like in the bottom left corner, when I first looked at it, I thought it said 11, but it's really 2 eyes. You know, but this is it looks like there's seatbelts on the page. This is the page I'm holding up. Page 7 you can find, but once you find page 7,
I don't see any numbers. There are no numbers on, no page.
yeah, I would say if you look,
Yeah.
you have to look. I'm going to show you. The double I is in the bottom, all the way bottom left corner. You couldn't get much lower. But it's not an 11, it's really the double I. So yeah, the page after 7 is actually page I. So, you know, page 1. Oh, no, actually, no, it probably is 8. Yeah, because the other one is, actually, the other one, oh, no, wait.
4.
Yeah.
And the one was the seat belt?
Anyway, yeah, like the seat belts, okay? Like the seat belts, that page. So you know, what Netivot Eimatai has done is that instead of giving you some of the medical details of one's condition, they turned it into a concept. And it could be, you know, some people may prefer working with one and not the other. Some might prefer using both of them because it really, you know, for me, I appreciate having both to look at. So, you know, so they say, you know, if you look on that page, what I'm saying, you know, is double I that you can't see so easily, but it says pain and risk tolerance. So, you know, that's already a concept from what we were looking at. The little bit that we looked at, you know, we're talking, at least we talked about pain. We didn't really talk about risk. But in the scenarios that we didn't read the text for, it does discuss risk without mentioning the word. Like it just says likely or unlikely, more likely that I'll die, you know, so that's a matter of risk. So here, so they say, I value undergoing potentially painful treatments if they have the potential of prolonging my life, even if they will not cure my underlying illness. It may lead to a significant discomfort. So it's a concept. So if you go, you know, I would encourage everybody to at least read that booklet, not to actually use it. In some ways, the living will from the RCA that I edited, you know, is more, you know, specific. You know, again, I value undergoing a high-risk procedure that might shorten or jeopardize my life if it could possibly stabilize my condition, but not cure my underlying illness. So is stability, you know, good enough? You know, sometimes people then, you know, again, at some point in our lives, we have a certain level of expectation, and then we become a little bit more realistic. Maybe I can't walk quite as far as I used to be able to walk. You know, so we accept certain realities of aging, and that may, you know, impact, you know, our decisions. Yeah.
Since it gives you a continuum, it's like, you know, there's yes and a no, and then there's a continuum in the middle. How does that happen?
No, I think that it's not a yes or no. They mean their intention, as I understand it, is to answer on the continuum. So one sees the depth of one's commitment.
Right,
to that
but he's
position.
saying it's feelings. Why you involved?
I hear you.
You want to answer that?
No, but I agree with Sarah because it's very personal. I mean.
Well, that's everything.
No, but it's so personal that people don't think it's a halacha. That, you know, there's a fine line here between my personal request and the halacha request. It's very wishy-washy. You just.
No, but
you
that-
gave us a lot of rabbis' names, but you know, one rabbi says this, one rabbi says that.
No, but again, it doesn't mean that everything in every situation would be
But it feels
accepted.
that. I mean, it seems to me, and I.
Again, like the question that Steve asked is that, the patient, the spouse, the proxy, whatever the case might be, should be discussing those answers with the halakhic authority that it fits into a halakhic scope. But to tell you want to know how I feel, I'm telling you how I feel. Now, does halakha agree with me? I might just like, listen, let's just change the scenario. I might feel like saying over an embarrassing situation that I saw happening to somebody yesterday, but the Torah tells me you have to restrain that because that's lashon hara.
No, but the example you gave is a man with the amputation.
Yeah.
Does that mean his neshama won't have an aliyah because he wasn't listening?
No, Rav Moshe, by saying I understand, he didn't say to him it's usher, it's prohibited. He didn't want to say, I guess, that I agree with you, but by saying he understood meant that because of the way he felt, with the intensities of the feeling that he felt, that that it was a legitimate decision, preference of his.
Of his.
Right, but endorsed by the halakhic authority. And you can't get much better than that one.
Well, that's true.
But but it just reminds me now, Bella. So thank you for bringing up the question for itself and for what it's sparking for me is that. But with two things I want to tell you. Again, I just want to emphasize that the patient is driving things. The source for this, or at least one of the sources, is in the famous story of Yonah. Yonah is given the mission to go ahead and to let the population in Nineveh know that they're slated for destruction because they're sinful. And the king and everybody else, because of the king, took this very sincerely, and they had tremendous tshuva going on, and that distressed Yonah, because as a prophet, he foresaw that this nation was going to attack Bnei Yisrael and cause us great grief. So he didn't want to be involved, in what was going to take place. So he tried to avoid Hashem. He tried to run away from Hashem, which you can't do. But he physically tried to do it. But so Yonah said to Hashem, Tov mitati mechayai. If I have to be the messenger to bring Nineveh to do tshuva, the truth is my death would be easier for me than my life. I'd rather have death. So that's a level of deep emotional pain. So that's what Moshe heard. He heard that person's deep emotional pain. But it can't be like the truth is if you turn the page, first of all, page the 3 or the 3I or the Roman numeral 3. That's what it is. So the decision-making preference. I'm not going to go over that, but it's good to go through that too. But when I look at the next page, the next seatbelt page, so I didn't see the title of that page originally. I actually have a call with the director of the age, Rabbi Dr. Brody, and he did try to get back to me even this morning, but I wasn't available. I hope to email him later. But I without the title, I took a step back because there's this thing, a feeling that I am excessive burden to others. When it comes to medical decisions, that's not part of the medical decision. We're talking about how the patient feels, not how the son or the daughter, feel about what's going on. Not the fact that they're exhausted because they're coming to the hospital. I mean, we understand, but listen, if it really leads the patient to extenuate emotional pain, so that might be in a different category. But then I saw that that the title here is physical and social independence. In other words, someone's coming out of an illness and they are compromised, and they're not going to have all the same physical abilities as they had previously in their life. So they have to make adjustments. So this document is trying to help them and their family understand what would speak to the patient, to the parent of their living conditions and stuff. But so don't be misled because I didn't see the title over there. But it's not when it comes to these medical directives, they shouldn't be made because of how somebody else might feel about your illness, being made about the patient, himself. And another parenthetical, not parenthetical, but maybe, just could have been mentioned someplace else. I'm going to mention it now, and then we know that we could take some more questions and maybe some answers. And that is that as it's possible, is that as convinced the person is that they don't want to live, let's say, with the pain that they have, and there's nothing, his body's not responding to the pain treatments that he's receiving. But nevertheless, if he knew that he had grandchildren coming from Israel to come and visit, and he might ask the doctors, please, you got to keep me alive until my grandchildren finish their visit. So it might be a temporary exemption, but you have those things. And so you'll find I think in both documents, there are a couple of questions that help to refine, like, are there any exceptions, to the position that you articulate? I definitely have met people, because I've spoken to people like this document. I have used a few of our members who came to the medical directives, were given a copy of this, and I discussed with them. And so that's the type of question I would ask. And there are some people who say, what I said is what I mean, no exceptions. Others, may have exceptions. Okay, thanks for your ears. I just wanted to I'll take questions in a moment, but I just want to reemphasize both the advantage of having identifying the proxy, even if it can be your children. Sometimes children can have differences of opinion of what should be taking place, or to interpret what the parent said. And that can lead to a lot of friction, unless the parent has designated, well, which one is the spokesperson. So
who do you leave this to, with the children? What do you feel the least process?
Well, it would be best, to photocopy, scan your answers, and to have one, keep one, the person should keep one for themselves. The other should be passed on to the proxy and or the family. And the third should be given to the halachic authority if you think that people might be asked, to turn to. But in the end, I guess that one might be less important, because the family can always give a copy of their copy, to the rabbi. But so the importance of the medical directives and the importance of making sure that they're updated, and that's a matter both of time, like if maybe every year might be good, truthfully. But if there's a major change in one's health, hopefully for the better. But if there's a major change in one's health, for sure, to go over. Okay, questions? I think Barbara.
While you're out,
Hold on.
write it down.
I'll say it over.
After you write it, is that the time that you would discuss it with the rabbi, or is this then your children say what you discussed in your?
It really could be either one. That's really great. By the way, I think, I'm not sure, you'll take a look. I think you might, with this Nitivot document, I think you might be able to answer this online and store it online, if that interests you, I think. Barbara asked whether a person should show the directives to their halachic authority now, even though they may have 100 years left, or let the children worry about it. So I think it's probably better to do it when you can be an active partner. There would be the better way to go. But the other way would work. But I don't know. I might have to establish office hours. But yeah. So anyhow, so great question. I would translate. Yes.
I find it repeatedly a conflict between the principle of not shortening life to the extent that's possible, with the need to take into account the state of mind. When a person makes these decisions, it's at a moment in time when you feel a certain way. I mean, the example you gave of the 96-year-old who was in very good health but couldn't see living without a leg. It's something that seems almost frivolous to say that you're allowed to stop living because you don't have a leg. Life is so much more about, of course, there's various different opinions, but you would think at this moment, because it's such a shock to have to lose your leg, you feel that you can't live without it. But you shouldn't be allowed to shorten a perfectly good, otherwise, a perfectly good life.
Great. So I want to tell you one more story that I heard from Rabbi Steinberg. He happened to be an 80-year-old, but the age doesn't really make a difference. But he wasn't interested in going. He was ill. I don't remember what the illness and how serious this was. But he shared with. He let it be known to people that he would like to die already. He was. I don't think he was even. He wasn't seriously ill. He may have been somewhat compromised physically, but he wasn't seriously ill. But it turned out he was a loner. He had nobody, and one of the people he mentioned to so wound up getting that message to the local Bikur Cholim. The Bikur Cholim started visiting him. He turned into a different person. But until that happened, he was experiencing one type of emotion. So yes, so if by people being sensitive, and certainly if they're children, like this 96-year-old man, it would sound from the story that he probably didn't have children, and or children that were involved with him, or aware of what was happening. But yes, so sometimes I did ask Rav Tendler a question about something that had to do like with his emotions, and his response to the part that had to do with the depression, he says, well, that could be treated. So right, so but that 96-year-old man was adamant. He did not want to do any of those other things. So this was the state of mind. So it was recognized. But yes, if people ourselves, if we can put ourselves together enough, even though when we're saddened and emotionally burdened, but certainly people around us, that's a very important role. I mean, that's like these suicide hotlines are there, for that purpose. Is that we shouldn't close our eyes to that we might be able to change somebody's perspective, and they may actually appreciate it like that motorcyclist did eventually. Yes.
I just want to say that a lot of this can be overwhelming, figuring out like where do you begin, how do you handle it?
Social worker, right? No, everybody should appreciate so they can listen to your advice.
Sat down with people at a volunteer basis and help them navigate this, not offering legal advice or medical advice, but just coordinating, just helping them get it done. My name's Andrea Seawald, SEEWALD. I'm in the Shoal Directory. So,
thank you. Was this prepared to be a social psychologist? My goodness, I have no idea why you're at this table. You're a social worker, psychologist, rabbi. You guys are going to talk about Moshe Tendler.
I was supposed to.
Yes.
No, funny thing is this: when you fill this out, or if I were to fill this out today, and Baruch Hashem, I'm in good health, etc., I would use. I know what answers I would give, but the truth of the matter is this: I don't know how I would feel once I'm struck with some kind of a disease. The odds are very strongly that I may change my mind.
That's why I haven't been able to answer some of the questions. I can't really.
We can't judge today what we will be.
I know. That's why it's important to keep it updated. It's like, most people do receive what Yaakov Avinu prayed for, warning, about our health changing, seriously. So, so most, but not all, not all get this. Unfortunately, some deaths are sudden. So we do the best that we can.
So you're saying that should be checked on the.
That's like in the document that I added, Rabbi Tendler told me he appreciated that very much, that you updated, that was not in the original document, so that never,
Which
people didn't
section
realize that they
is
should be
that?
looking at it. It's the next to the last page, so basically, but no, well, not counting the notes pages, so you could update. Yes, Cheryl?
Money has a lot to do with it also. I watched my mother 10 years die in 1970. And after a while, she needed help. And she stayed in the house the whole time. My father was, thank God, alive in the sugar. But somebody was there 24/7, for a few years. So if you don't have the money, money plays a big part in some of these steps.
So, I'm not gonna give a shock right now.
What's the question?
The question is, can money be a factor of not continuing life?
No, it's the way you continue.
It-
She could have gone to a nursing home, and she probably would have gone a lot sooner. Because there was plenty of money, she had the best care possible. That makes a big.
Well, it's a good plug for people, for younger people, to take out, what's that, long-term care insurance?
You can afford it. If you can afford that.
No, but you can get home care.
Right.
But, yeah, look, so I think I think that a default answer would do that. We want to try to be able to do the best that we can.
Right.
But if the best that we can, it might be something that's going to give us tremendous emotional, pain, so that maybe we can't do, the best. But certainly, I thought you were starting off that because, even the lowest level care is expensive.
There you go.
So, and I'm not sure, truthfully, that money is allowed to play the factor.
But it's.
But I'll look into it.
She's right. My mother, I feel like my mother died much more quickly as soon as we moved her into a nursing home when she ran out of money. When my mother ran out of money, we moved her into a nursing home and she died within 6 weeks. So it is hastening their death.
Right.
Rabbi,
Yes. I have a question, so, yes.
One question. You talked about, section 5 made it a point of saying, one of the conditions was, and I have, what was the word, intractable pain. And yet the first 4 sections didn't mention somebody being in pain, they might be unconscious. Which brings me to the halachic question, if somebody's already unconscious, so there's not a problem with pain in it, and you've got all these questions, do I want this, do I want that, do I want the other thing? And yet right here in the beginning, you say it's fundamental principle, you have to extend life, but not if somebody's in intractable pain. So my question is, halachically, if somebody's not in intractable pain because they're already unconscious, this implies to me, and I don't want it to be the case, but it implies to me that there's an overriding ability to extend that person's life.
Yes, that's a very Tendler did hold that say even irreversible coma is not a justification for disconnecting.
So it's almost as if to say, if I answer all these questions, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want the other thing. But
no, but again, in some of those cases, a person having indicated that, we're not totally sure, about what, again, how aware people are. Didn't someone just come out of a 10-year coma, or a young man? Or maybe he's 40 now, just in the news this week, I think, or the end of last week, that somebody came out of a multi-year, coma. But If you want, we could follow up. I want to check something in my notes. I might have an answer already, but in general, still some of the responses can override if the response is there. But certainly without a medical directive, saying that my preference would be not to be treated, then someone who's not in pain, even though they're in coma, that treatment should continue. If there's no.
But like I say, given the presence of a medical directive,
You,
that could, under certain circumstances, override the principle of the presence of intractable pain.
that's the action.
The absence,
Yeah.
it could even override that. Because he would say, even if you're unconscious, whether or not pain is being around. I think that.
Yes.
I don't want to get into a philosophical discussion or a lot of discussion. I'm not qualifying either one. But it's just you by the what.
No, but that is a role that medical directors, can play at least in some of the circumstances. Okay, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Have a good day.